Ciaran, great to see you. Thank you for making a bit of time to come and have a chat with me. I always appreciate that because I know people are busy. I want to kick off this discussion with something that we talked about last time. I mean, you were saying that, well, we had a conversation about whether AI is going to take away researchers' jobs. I mean, we had quite an interesting conversation about that. I mean, I mean, just tell me how you see that issue in relation to the particular way that you're using technology.
Yeah. So I would see that we're not taking away jobs. What we're doing is we're opening up access to research to millions of businesses who couldn't access it before. Okay, so traditionally, market research and access to market research, it was it could only be afforded by the larger companies, the companies with bigger budgets and time to spend researching. For most businesses in the world, they're luxuries they don't have. They don't have the time. They can't wait months to get an answer. They can't spend tens of thousands to get that answer. They need to be agile, and they need to be cost effective. And for those people, market research wasn't even on the radar. Okay, it's an expensive thing that they can't even contemplate. We're changing that. So we're putting market research firmly within the hands of millions of businesses now, far more than the current researchers could service.
Mm.
Okay, so I don't see that we're taking away researchers' jobs. I see it that we're creating a market, a much bigger market than is there at the moment.
Okay, so just
Um,
explain. I mean, I obviously know a little bit about your technology because we
yeah,
talked about it a while ago. I mean, just explain for the people that are listening. I mean, explain how you're doing that because that's a really interesting idea, that opening
yeah,
up that market research space
yeah.
to many, many more businesses. I mean that seems to me to be a pretty cool thing to do. I mean, tell us how your
It
tech
is. It
is
is.
enabling that.
All right. Well, just a little bit of a backstory. So I've spent 25 years helping big businesses understand and solve their problems. And I've ran qual research projects for the likes of Google and Shopify and Vodafone. And qual research, this basically where you're talking to people one on one.
Mm.
Sometimes maybe focus groups, people might have heard that term. But one-on-one interviews, it's really powerful. You get really good customer insights from talking to people like that. But the challenges are really slow and
Yeah,
really expensive,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
just doesn't scale. If you want to talk to people in Germany and Hong Kong and Peru, it's impossible at the moment with, human-led research. Um, and that's what we're addressing. So we have an AI interviewer that will talk to people, and it talks in natural flowing conversations. It talks just like a human moderator would. It'll run the interviews for you in different languages, in different markets. It can run tens or hundreds at once, and you get your answers, you get your insights immediately. An interview finishes, you get your insights. You run 100 interviews in a study, you get your insights. You're not waiting weeks for the answers. You could have your answers in days or hours.
Yeah, so in effect, an AI doing what a human would do, and it means it can do it at scale. And presumably, it could interview somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning if the interviewee would prefer to be interviewed at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. So we're essentially eliminating all the bottlenecks that traditional market research companies face. Okay, so one of the biggest bottlenecks is logistics, finding a time when the researcher is available at the same time as the participants. That's the biggest bottleneck. Um, Other bottlenecks include not having language skills to work in multiple languages, not having the market penetration to be able to work in different markets. And then the analysis side of research, that doesn't scale linearly. So if you did 10 interviews, if you did 50 interviews, it's going to take you a lot longer to process than 10 interviews. If you do 100, you're talking, you're effectively talking of putting on a team of researchers for, a few months if you want to talk to 100 plus people. Whereas we can do it in days or even hours.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of what you're trying to achieve, I mean, what sort of impact are you? I mean, you kind of touched on, sort of, if you like, democratizing market research. I mean, what kind of
Mhm.
impact are you looking to have over the medium to long term, and what are you trying to achieve here?
So I've like it's even a sticky I have over at the other side of the room that I put there years ago. I've always had this motto to make the world a better place. Okay.
Right. Right.
And that sounds very altruistic and grand, but you know what? It's one of my core beliefs. And it's something I hold dear in everything I do. And this what we're doing, I'm taking all of the skills I've built up over the past 25 years. I'm using this new technology capability and I'm putting it into a package that people who don't need to be researchers can get answers to business questions. Ultimately, to help them run their businesses more effectively, to understand their consumers, their customers, their stakeholders. Um, and ultimately make better decisions, have confidence in their decisions and bubble all that up. That leads to a world that's a little bit of a better place than it was before.
Mm. I mean, it's interesting you make the point about making better decisions because I think people often forget that market research is not just an end in itself. It's a tool to enable you to decide something, either
Yes,
to do things or not do things or do it in a particular way. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
they're decision-making tools, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. And like if you wanted to boil down what we do, it's decision confidence.
Mm.
Um, and it's trust and it's getting to the truth. They're the like if you wanted to like really boil it down to what we get you, decision confidence is what we're getting you.
Yeah. And in terms of being the CEO, how are you approaching, I mean, you're at a relatively early stage with the
Yeah,
business. How
yeah,
have you approached the process of building a business? I mean, what's your take on, I mean, because you've already built a business previously, or more than one, I think. How are you approaching this? And is that different from the way you did it because this is an AI first business, if you like.
yeah,
Is it different building an AI
yeah.
first business?
Oh, it's black and white. Yeah, it's
In
completely
what
different.
way is it black and white? I mean, just
So
explain
if
to
if I
people.
look away, if I look at my previous agency, the company I co-founded, and they're still going. I stepped away last year, just over a year ago. Um, when we were getting going, like it was essentially a time and services uh, uh, time and services model. If we
Yeah.
wanted to scale, we had to have a bigger team. And if we had a bigger team, then we had to feed that bigger team with more projects. And there's a lot of pressure in that business model. But also, there's a lot of overhead and admin required. And in the pre-AI world, that required people. So, in a team of, let's say, 10 researchers, there were effectively, five people doing other jobs that weren't research and design. And you could maybe support a team of um, 20 revenue generators, but you'll still need that team of five admin people. Um, that's not the reality these days. AI is enabling so much, and not just AI, like over the last number of years, you have various software as a services coming out to lighten the load, especially for startups. Um, and now it's taken to the next level really with AI, that you can integrate and interact with either directly with these services or just build them yourself. It wasn't possible even just last year.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And how are you? I mean, in terms of the people side of the business, I mean, how are you managing, those sort of relationships? Because presumably you need people to help you build it. You're not going to need to employ a bunch of researchers. I mean, you might employ some people to review the data, I guess. But I mean, how are you sort of approaching the people side of that? Because again, that will be. I mean, it's in the previous business, it was all about people. This
Yeah,
is about tech and about people. I mean, it's a
yeah,
different.
yeah,
Just tell us about
yeah. So I like the way I like to see it is, we're working with several really senior developers. Um, and they're akin to managers, okay? And that's effectively what they're doing. They're managing coding agents
that.
which are writing the codes. So really, the way we're working is we're working as if, we're a seven-person team, but we're working as if we're a layer of management over a larger team. And it's AI that's essentially the backbone of our workforce.
And has that required you to change as a leader, as a manager? I mean, are you having to do things in a very different way than previously? And if so, in what way?
Has it? I'm not sure. Like if I think about the way that I've worked, you know, the last decade or so, I've been working at I suppose you'd consider it a practitioner manager role. So in my previous company, like the title was principal designer, principal researcher. Um, so I'd have the skills to get in and do the project work on the ground,
Hmm.
but most of my time would have been spent managing the projects, managing the teams. And like I mentioned before, I really value autonomy. It's one of the drivers for setting up my own company was to have autonomy, not just for me, but also for the team members, give them an environment where they actually love to work, where they get the responsibility, but they also have the autonomy to do things that interest them. Um, and yeah, like I don't know if it's changed that much. It's just that now I'm interacting a lot more with AIs rather than other team members.
I mean, one of the things that people say to me is that because of AI, things are changing much faster, which means that one of the challenges is kind of keeping up, keeping all the balls in the air. There's now more balls in the air, if you get
Yeah,
my drift. I
yeah.
mean, which has always struck me as, I mean, there are going to be a limit. Well, maybe there's not a limit. I don't know, but it feels like you're pushing up against the limit of what humans can cope with in terms of keeping all these balls up in the air. I mean, how do you feel about that? What's your been experience of that?
Well, CEO, right? Chief Everything Officer, right? You
Yeah.
have to have your finger on the pulse of everything. Um, and again, like I mentioned, there's autonomy, you delegate certain things to certain people. But yeah, more and more I find that the overlaps between skill sets are kind of blurring again because of the enablement that AI has offered. So the workload can be shared across the team. And for example, um, so I haven't mentioned yet, myself and my co-founder Alex, she's my wife and co-founder. We have complementary skills, but also with the AI enablement, we have a lot of overlapping areas where one can pick up when the other is, essentially when under a bit of pressure. Um, but yeah, I think that overwhelm is always going to be there in business, especially in startups. You always feel like there's something you're not doing.
Mm.
And that's the reality of being CEO. You need to focus on what are your priorities, know what to drop, and know the implications of that.
Mm. And that's one of the interesting things. I mean, you use the phrase chief everything officer. I mean, I use that phrase a lot because I think that is very much the case when you're in a small outfit. Um, the thing I was going to ask is, I mean, you're absolutely right. You have to work out what your priorities are, but that's easier to say and it's more difficult to do. I mean, because I mean, I don't know what your experience has been, but there's a lot of noise around. And I'm one of those people that gets easily distracted. You know, there's a shiny thing over there. I'll go and
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I mean, what's your approach to kind of cutting through the noise and what sort of impact does that have on you? How are you able to, I mean, how do you find your way through that maze, if you like?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so a couple of different ways, like some very practical ways I do. Like the first of all, like the advances in technology, there's just no point in trying to keep up. You can't read every single newsletter, you can't try every demo, you can't read in-depth research about every new breaking model. There's no point, right? You're just going to be snowed under. So the way I've been operating is primarily two ways. One is sampling, right? So dipping in and out, sampling things via LinkedIn, sampling things via Twitter, um, Reddit, and so on. So every now and then, just dip in, get immersed for a while, find the interesting things. I bookmark quite a lot of interesting links. I bookmark them in Slack, and I have my Slack connected to an MCP server, so I can effectively use my Copilot in Claude to talk to my bookmarks to pull out the
Right,
relevant
right.
things. So there's lots of little hacks like that. So that's one way, and then the other way is actually very human focused, right? So I'm a member of a couple of different startup communities, and one in particular in here in Dublin, Baseline. Um, there's a very vibrant WhatsApp group community, and within that, there's like the Tech Talk channel where there's constant discussion and new tools,
Mm.
and it's very easy just to scan through that, or even, again, get the LLM to search through and find the relevant things. But for me, that's an important one because that's trusted advice. They're people that I know and that I trust. And if I get a steer from one of them, and if there's something there that I want to know a bit more about, just reach out, have a chat with them, meet them there in Baseline. Um, so they're the two ways, like sampling the news, not trying to keep up with everything, and then sampling from trusted communities.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, being able to talk to people still pretty important
Oh yeah,
to
yeah,
us humans, isn't it? Really, I mean, it may
yeah.
change, but at the moment, it still seems to me to be pretty important. Let me ask you about something that's not so much about the technical part, but the emotional part. I mean, one of the things about, I mean, I looked at your product.
Hmm.
It's very different I mean, I haven't seen anything exactly the same in the market. I mean, it's quite a unique. I mean, it probably won't be for much longer, I don't suppose. But at the moment, it seems to be quite a unique piece of tech.
Hmm.
How do you feel about going up against the status quo? I mean, for a lot of people are brought up to be essentially fairly sensible and cooperative and reasonable and helpful and most of my mates are like that, reasonable, friendly, sensible people. And I'm not sure that kind of environment equips you for going up against the status quo when everybody's telling you, no, 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 that's not the way to do it. We do it, How do
Yeah,
you feel about doing something that is a little bit outside the box? I
yeah.
mean, what's your take on that?
So first of all, you're right in that we're unique. We do have some competitors, but we're doing it in a
Yeah.
what I consider as a harder way. We took the harder approach to do it.
Yeah.
In that we're doing natural language conversations in order to encourage people to open up more. We get more insights out of it. Yeah, it is going up against the status quo, but you know what? It's this like the status quo. The status quo is a bit of a misnomer, really, isn't it? Because change is the only thing that's constant, right?
Yeah.
And with AI, that change is just accelerating like crazy. And you mentioned earlier about like how do you feel about taking researchers' jobs, and fully disagree with that. But what we have seen is we get a huge amount of inbound from researchers, from people working in in insights teams,
Right. Right.
people who are doing day-to-day research, and they're just overwhelmed by what they have to deliver, and they can't do it manually. They can't do it the old way. And they're looking to enable to superpower themselves with these AI tools. And I think that's so there's one element. There's always going to be the purists who don't want to do it the new technology enabled way. Um, I like to compare them to like the tailors who used to make handmade suits. Okay, there'll always be a market for hand tailored suits, right? But the vast majority of people won't want hand tailored suits.
Mm.
They probably won't want suits anyway. They want clothes. They want clothes at a good price. They want clothes that are accessible that they can go and get without, waiting weeks for the product to be made. And we're doing exactly that in the research world. Um, so yeah, like this, status quo. People who are in the market research world, they are feeling the pinch now. And just like huge amounts of different industries. They're feeling the pressure from AI, and they are, like I gave a talk to UX designers uh, last year, and it was all around the premise of using AI as your superpower. Because if you don't, you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a very well made point because it's not going to go away.
No.
The only question
And
is in what impact's it going to have on your world, isn't it, really? It's
yeah,
not going to go
and
away.
and the way it is now is the worst it'll ever be from now into the future, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you about one of the points you just made. I mean, the great thing about technology is that it enables you to operate in a global environment. I mean, your technology could be used to interview people in Latin America,
Yeah,
even though you're based in Ireland or whatever,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, that's a great thing. That opens up great opportunities. The flip side to that is that you're then competing in a global market. So there's a really advantage. There's a really great advantage, but there's also a really powerful disadvantage. I mean, what's your experience of that been? How do you feel about competing in that environment? I mean,
I've no problems whatsoever and no fears whatsoever. The way I see it is that it's all one big market anyway. Okay, any online business, it's all one big market,
yeah,
and it has been for a number of decades. Well, a couple of decades, um, and I think what we're able to do, it's relatively new to be able to service, 90% of the world's population from a market research perspective. That would have been considered bonkers 2 years ago.
yeah,
So I'm just, I'm thrilled by the opportunity of it.
mm,
Um, and it's, we've had calls with customers in all sorts of parts of the world. And it's always amazing just to talk with them about their needs, to see their different use cases, um, and to understand how we can help them. And like some of the projects we've done are like I couldn't have thought of those use cases
yeah,
myself.
yeah.
That's great. It's just really exciting.
Yeah, that was what was going through my mind. It's a really exciting time. It brings with lots of challenges, but it's a really exciting time. I
Yeah.
don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, the other interesting thing about building a business at this point in time is that you have to build it, if you like, in the age of social media, when your people could go off and say anything, your stakeholders and customers and stuff, observe what you do because it's they can see it. You might have people watching you that are based in Lima watching what you're, it's an incredible, it's like being, I always kind of think about it, on the one hand, we were operating globally, in another sense, we're in a global fishbowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's been your experience of trying to build in a social media fishbowl, for want of a better way of describing it? I mean, how do you feel about that? And how has that impacted on the way you do things?
It hasn't really. Like I've always been. I've always been open about what I'm doing.
Mhm.
We're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes at all. Um, and I think the what I find challenging actually is just I'm pretty much certain that this is goes across the board for most people, especially startups, is finding the time to dedicate to being in, setting out your piece in that fishbowl.
Mhm.
Finding the time to post regularly on LinkedIn, finding the time to engage with the people who like and comment on your posts. It can seem like an overhead, but it is really important. And especially for startups, just to get visibility. You have to work with the algorithms that are there at the moment. Maybe in the future years there'll be an altruistic AI that'll be able to pinpoint the exact solutions for customers, and we won't need to do advertising budgets and so on. But where we are now, for startup founders, it's really important to be visible and to be findable, especially on social media.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, I don't think social media is going to go away, but like AI, it's never going to go away. I mean, it's going to evolve, would be my take, and it's not going to go away anyway. And you mentioned their customers. I mean, what does a good customer look like to you?
It's really interesting. We're getting so much variety. Like we have our ideal customer profiles, right? So it's either somebody who's working in insights in a brand, medium to large size brand who have those traditional research budgets but are looking to stretch them further. Um, or it's people working in agencies, advertising agencies, strategic agencies, innovation agencies who need to talk to people to inform their strategies or their campaigns, product launches and so on. But previously they could only really afford that for the big ticket clients.
Yeah.
We're now enabling that across the board. So they're the customers we're targeting, but other people are coming to us. We've had interest from a big player in the defense industry. We've ran studies with an academic, with a professor in an Irish university about people's end of life care, where we were interviewing people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Um, we've run like all sorts of studies. I'm running a study at the moment with right now I'm doing with the Finnish market, but the premise is the last generation to die. And how do you feel about being in possibly the last generation of people to die? Because we're soon reaching, like longevity, what do you call it, escape velocity. So yeah, we've had a lot of different people working with us. Um, and I think, we have our targets, but other people are finding us. And I think it just shows you the versatility of what we're doing. Just being able to talk to people at scale is really important, no matter what sector you're in.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, it confers a huge advantage if you can get it right, doesn't it? Because you'll have insights that other companies won't have. So it seems to me a pretty powerful tool there. Let me ask you about um, community as against individual customers. I mean, to what extent in your situation is building a community around what you're doing? To what extent is that important to you and why? I mean, you hear that all the time about this idea of community, and I'm not sure it works for every business. But what's your
Mhm.
take on your situation?
Um, so do I see ourselves building our own community? I don't think so. Um, you know, we'll, we probably we have good relationships with our own customers, whether we have them on our Slack channel. But do we feel a need to build a community? I don't think so. Um, some of those customers do.
Mm,
Especially the big brands. They're all about trying to get closer to their customers. trying to, upsell or lock in certain aspects. But for us, I don't actually feel that community is an important factor. And less so even when you think about the participants, right? Because with market research, you don't want to have the same person answering multiple different
Yeah.
research studies. There's a couple of like user testing platforms out there where the people on them are, effectively professional testers, and you lose your actual genuine insights when you have that.
Mm.
So we're very much focused on getting insights from real consumers, real customers, real stakeholders, rather than trying to build up a community of people who'd use it.
Mm. Yeah, no, I follow that logic. And of course, your clients are going to want you to talk to different types of clients, aren't they? Customers, as it were,
Yeah,
in terms of who
yeah,
you
yeah,
research. I mean, let me ask you about, you used the word insight there. I mean, just tell us a bit in a practical sense about the kind of insights that come out of the work that you do. If you were doing a piece of work for a client, I mean, what sort of insights, if I was your client, what sort of insights could I expect? I mean, how in what is it very different from the conventional insights that you get from research done if you like manually? I mean,
yeah,
are the insights different? I'm conscious the process is different, but are the
yeah,
insights?
yeah. I believe so. I've over my career, I've seen lots of outputs from market research, and they tend to be like 60, 70, 80, 100, 100 slide PowerPoint decks crammed full of graphs and percentages and all that kind of thing. And quite often, at the end of, a couple of months project, there's a session where that's presented,
Yeah,
glossed over for the most part, because you can't cover, 80, 100 slides in an hour. Um, and then the report is circulated, usually not opened, and then forgotten about. Um, in my previous role, we honed a process where we would effectively get really fast feedback to the clients on the research work. Okay, so I'm talking we'd run our interviews, and within a couple of days, we'd give them, here are the highlights, here are the main themes we found. And all the clients loved that. They were able to say, this is important for us, this is important for us. So I've been adhering to that ethos in getting the information back to them fast, not not surfacing millions of charts and texts and slides,
yeah,
focusing on things that are digestible, focusing on actionable insights. So here's something you should keep an eye on. Here's actually something you can do about that. So really making it practical, and especially in our product, we're really focusing so that a business owner can run research without needing any research skills. They can go and get answers to business questions without needing to be a researcher. And then they can look at the outputs and see the answers to those business questions in terms that they can understand. Now, all the data is still there for anybody who wants to delve into all the intricacies of how we arrived at those insights. But really, we're about surfacing those top level insights and things that people can actually take action on.
yeah.
And that's, again, it comes back to trust and it comes back to decision confidence. That's what we're about giving people the confidence to make decisions.
Yeah, yeah. Informed decisions, I think, is the word, isn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
And let me ask you about the kind of working in different parts of the world. I mean, your technology is scalable. I mean, you could use it anywhere, as far as I can
Yeah,
see, unless you're
yeah,
telling me I've got that wrong. It seems to me it
no.
could work anywhere. That then creates another challenge, which is doing business in Singapore, very different from doing business in London. As a for instance, I'm not saying you're in Singapore or London, but in terms of how you manage the kind of cultural nuances, because your technology is essentially asking people questions and collecting their feedback.
Mhm.
that opens the door to this thing about misinterpretation and kind of cultural bias and all those kind of nuances. I mean, what's your take on that? Will AI help you handle that better, or is it likely to make that more difficult? I mean, what's your kind of spin?
Yeah, yeah. I think it will. Like what we see, for example, one of the things that we're doing is we're in our interviews, in the analysis of our interviews, we're analyzing the tone of voice for different expressions. Okay, so is somebody excited about something? Is somebody disappointed in something? Is somebody frustrated in something? Okay, and all those things, they're not like if you get a transcript of an interview, you're getting the what somebody said.
Yeah,
But when you layer on
yeah,
these like emotions, you're getting how they said it, and that's ultimately getting to the truth. And the reason I bring this up is that that analysis we do, that's incredibly cross-cultural. Okay, so somebody who in it is expressing something with a disappointed tone of voice, it's it's equally measurable in China as it is in London.
right.
And that aspect, like that actually really surprised me when we delved into the science behind it, that it's incredibly cross-cultural. Um, and I think that's one thing that, humans could actually do with a bit of a kick up the butt and realize that we're a lot more similar than we are different.
Mm,
Um, and it's something, if technology can bring us together a bit better rather than the moment with, social networks seeming to divide us so much,
mm.
that would make the world a better place.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Actually, the difficulty is, of course, is the differences that wind people up on it. I mean, you don't worry about the similarities; it's the other
Yeah,
stuff that
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of creates all the problems, isn't it? Really,
yeah.
it's a very interesting issue that, and just in terms of not so much your business, but the sector, the world that you're in. I mean, your business is obviously AI first.
Hmm.
How do you think more broadly in the kind of research sector? How do you think AI is going to impact on that? And I'm thinking, you've got students in universities doing research, you've got businesses doing research, you've got political parties doing research, you've got, I mean, how is that world going to be impacted by AI, do you think? What's your reading of how that's going to play out?
Um, I believe it's going to have a massive impact, okay, but not a negative impact.
Right.
Like, if you think about it, if somebody goes into a career in research, why are they doing it? They're doing it to understand what people think, what people feel, what people say. We can enable that at a much greater scale than they could have done on their own or with a team of humans. So I believe that, whether it's us, whether it's a competitor of ours, whether it's future solutions, they're all going to do one thing, which is going to be able to get insights from real people quicker. And that's going to, that's ultimately improving what researchers can do. So if I was to give any advice to students, it would be similar to what I said to the UX designers at the UX talk last year. Really embrace AI, embrace it as your superpower. Keep up with the developments. You don't need to keep up with everything in detail, but keep up with the broad trends
Mm,
and tinker around with it, practice it, use it.
mm,
One of the things I firmly believe is using AI for good. So we're like as a company, we're dedicating a certain percentage of our platform usage towards good causes, not for profits, and so on. But also, I've been in talks with a couple of different universities to offer them the use of the platform for their students.
mm,
Okay, so that they can understand some of these new tools that are on the market. And, it could be by the time they graduate, the technology landscape has changed again.
mm.
But it's better that they get exposed to the current state of art rather than emerging into a market and not having a clue.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think whichever way it plays out, it's going to be pretty interesting. Let me ask you about you. I mean, when you look back on your journey, I always like to ask this. I mean, is there anything you do different if you're starting again?
I don't know, like I've had a very meandering journey, right? I started off doing computer and electronic engineering, moved to sound engineering, worked in a sound studio doing post-production for TV and movies. Went looking for a job in the west coast of the States in San Francisco. Got offered a couple of computing jobs. One was with Adobe as a developer, and I was like, nah, that's not for me. I got offered a job in effectively doing UX design. I didn't know the term back then, but games researcher in a company called Nokia in Finland. And I was like, yeah, let's see what this is like. Moved over to Finland, worked effectively doing UX, augmented reality concepts, game design concepts, working with universities, working with the business units in Nokia, um, and understanding the technology landscape across the world. Um, Left Finland when Apple was when I could see the writing was on the wall back in 2005 when Apple were hiring telecoms engineers, right? There was something up. And then when they released the iPhone, when they announced the iPhone in 2007, I was like, right, making my exit. Um, but yeah, came back to Ireland, worked in a UX design agency doing UX design and research. Um, Co-founded an agency with some colleagues. And I think one of the brilliant things about working in consulting is you're imbibing all these different business models
Yeah,
and
it's a
these
great way
different.
to learn, isn't it?
Oh, it's like
And
as one of my ex-colleagues used to say, it was like, for every year consulting, it's like dog years, it's 7 years of
yeah,
experience.
yeah, no, I recognise that. Well,
Yeah.
are you saying then that people should think about deliberately having a more meandering career, or are you saying that was a bad thing and that they should be laser focused
No.
on
I
getting to the
yeah,
place they want to get to?
I'm a big believer in serendipity, but also in increasing your surface area of look. Okay, so making yourself attractive to lots of different opportunities. And then, you know, going where the flow takes you, and directing that flow at certain points, but be open to change. And again, like I mentioned earlier, like change is the only constant, right?
Yeah,
And the way the world is now, like things are changing at like an unprecedented rate.
yeah,
Where we'll be in 5 or 10 years is going to be practically unrecognizable from where we are now. And it may, like, at a physical level, at a surface level, it may seem very similar, but the types of jobs we do, how we get compensated for those jobs could be topsy-turvy by then.
yeah, yeah. I mean, your point I think is well made. I mean, once upon a time, people didn't like change. Change was perceived as a bad thing, wasn't it? I mean,
Mm,
it has to be the opposite now. We have to
mm.
lean into change
Yeah.
because, what was it they say? What cannot be avoided must be welcomed. It's not going to go away. I
No,
mean,
it's not. No,
it's only
no.
going to get faster, I think. And the
Yeah.
interesting thing is how you cope with the increasing speed. I don't think there's ever been a point in history when there is as much change happening as there is now. So, it's kind of, if you don't get on board, you're in the drink, aren't you? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
structuring. And when you look, I mean, you just described all the different, that meandering career you described it. I mean, what were the big things that you learned from all those different experiences? I mean, can you conceptualize that in a couple of really important things that you took away from that journey that have changed you, perhaps, or had a profound influence on you?
I think the biggest thing is that just with lots of different layers of experience, you can make those connections between those different areas.
Yeah,
Okay. So it's just I'm like personally, I've always been a really curious person. I've been, like taking apart an old stereo when I was 5. Just to understand what works and what was going on inside behind the plastic facade. Um, Curiosity for me is one of the big drivers. Just always wanting to learn. And because of that mindset, being open to lots of different experiences has allowed me to make those connections between different experiences. And when I was consulting, Ultimately that's one of the big benefits if you're trying to understand business problems and then solving business problems. If you can make those connections, it's really important. For me, one of the things that I can do really well is simplify the complex. To understand a really complex landscape and boil it down to the simple parts. I think there's somebody who makes rocket ships and electric cars who has a very similar approach to essentially going back to first principles
Yeah.
with everything. And I think that's driven what we've done in CogniStream, going back to first principles and not taking the easy way, but taking the more natural way in that we have voice conversations the way humans have conversations. If we talk about the participant interview experience, our interviewer will ask open-ended questions. It'll wait for the participant to answer. If it does interrupt inadvertently, it'll stop interrupting as soon as it hears the participant, very much like a human moderator would, and very much like our conversation here. And that's not the easy way to build a product like that. It takes a lot of adjustment and fine-tuning, but it's the most natural way and it's the right way to do it. So yeah, like I've always been driven by, some fairly high morals of doing the right thing, doing the right way, doing it in a respectful manner. Um, yeah, I think we are at an incredible time. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where this pans out.
It's good to hear you use that kind of language, actually. I mean, I find it, you listen to the news and you listen to, Donald Trump, moaning at people. I mean, it's incredibly disrespectful, really. And in our current political environment, we seem to have lost that. And I think, given that you're in the research game, I mean, being curious is pretty important, but also treating people with respect because they have different views, don't they? And
Yeah,
it's really important. I mean, they won't respond to you unless you treat people with respect. So it's
yeah.
pretty important thing there. So, wise words, wise words, I think there, Kieran. Thank you for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. I mean,
Thank
fantastic,
you. Really
fantastic
enjoyed it.
bit of technology that you've developed. Fantastic proposition, and I'm sure it's going to be a really well. It's already a success. I'm sure it's going to be a really big success. So, thank you for coming and telling us about it. I mean, it's a really exciting development, I think. So,
Yeah. And
much
listen, if
appreciated.
if any of your listeners want to check it out, go to cognistream.ai, have a look. If it interests you, reach out to us and we'll have a chat.
Cool, great stuff. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Cheers, then. Bye bye.